Hello, my dear friends. Welcome to episode 4 of Casual Cognition. Thank you so much for joining us today. Just want to give a quick shout out because this episode of Casual Cognition is brought to you in part by Caesar. One of our amazing listeners sent in an email asking us to talk a little bit about meditation. So we're going to get into that a little bit later in the episode. But first, we're going to explore a little bit about the social media and phone epidemic. And then we talk a little bit about mental illness and depression. And then we wrap it up with what will be a recurring segment on meditation. So guys, thank you so much for joining us. Really happy to have you here listening in once again. Thank you guys so much for your support, and I hope you enjoy this week's episode.
Here we go.
Here we go, man. And today, we have got a doozy.
Yes, a doozy indeed.
It is an absolute doozy, folks. We are going to talk about the social media and phone epidemic.
Yes, the other epidemic that's going on right now. One of the many.
Yes, and it's been going on for some time now. We've had smartphones for...
think about 15 years.
Yeah, about 15 years. So we've had time to study the detrimental and positive effects of having these devices. Some would consider human beings to have transitioned into a cyborg state. But that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, I love that imagery that, like, instead of the Terminator, it's just us staring at our fucking phones. We thought it was going to be way cooler looking.
Yeah, definitely. I absolutely thought it was going to be way cooler. But this is where we're at. We have phones. They are amazing devices.
You're probably listening to us on one right now.
You're probably listening to us on your phone. You're probably listening to us on a computer that is more powerful than the one that was used to land human beings on the moon. Yeah. And you have it in your pocket, and you use it to scroll through Facebook and look at porn. I mean, my God, people, what are you doing?
Only the best kind of things. Don't call out our listeners like that. We're not privy to their browser history. But, you know, it's such a tough one because it's almost, to me, an inevitable product of the internet and the smartphone. You know, as we continue to connect more and more, it's just, we're going to use the technology to be social. We're going to use the technology to advertise ourselves. And corporations and businesses are going to use the technology to try and enhance their profit. Like, it's such a powerful tool that I don't think, like, one of the options some people put out there is like, well, everybody should just get flip phones. Ain't gonna happen. I mean, it's just out of the question. I mean, there can be certain specific people that do that, but there needs to be a more wide-ranging solution to these issues other than, well, let's just stop using the technology. It's just not gonna happen.
Yeah, and I think really the solution comes down to becoming aware of the effects that these things have on our psychology and on our well-being, and then making intelligent decisions and forming the right behaviors and patterns and habits around our use of this technology to ensure that we aren't basically harming ourselves, because as we'll get into a little bit, it's pretty overwhelming and it's very substantial, the psychological effects of social media and phone use on the human organism. And one of the things, I guess, to just get going on this is like, this is just something that I see, it's so pervasive in our society, is the just like, it's so strange how the phone has become a barrier to the external world. Like, it's like, okay, I have my internal world, and then there's this virtual world that I interface with, and then beyond that is the external world. And like, the virtual world has come between human beings and the external world in some kind of strange way. I mean, this is like just the way that I'm thinking about it, because I see people walking down the street and they're just staring at their phones. They're completely unaware of what is going on around them. They don't notice other people. They don't notice cars going by. They're just completely absorbed in this thing. And you mentioned, you know, like, we use this tool socially because we're social creatures, right? But it's so strange because it is like this weird proxy that we use for social activities, but it actually doesn't give us the same level of fulfillment and the same kind of neurochemicals that we get through actual physical social activity from being with a community of people. You get some of that in certain contexts, but it's kind of like this really thin and kind of effervescent, like, wisp of what the real feeling is, at least in my experience.
Yeah, and going along with that, one of the most important aspects for people to understand when they're thinking about this issue is something you and I have talked about a little bit, and that is the ratio of active versus passive participation in various social media platforms. And it's usually less than 1%, and usually in the hundreds of percentage range, like, 0.0 something.
Yeah.
And
0.0 something of a percent. And not only that, so okay, just to quickly unpack that a little bit. Less than 0.1% of all people that are on social media are passive. So they do not interact at all. There's no posting, there's no likes, there's not, just scrolling up and down. And that 0.09%, we'll call it, just to make it, because it's different for different sites, but 0.09% that is posting is including bots.
Yeah, I guess I didn't think about that one too.
Yeah, that's including bots that are built to post and like and manipulate
so that number's
the
actually probably really high of what it
actually is.
Yeah,
so it's even lower than that, and which is just staggering.
Yeah, and I saw a sort of infograph a while back, years ago, about the split of Reddit users, because that's pretty much the only social media platform that I use regularly.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like like a tiny fraction of the users actually have Reddit accounts. The tiny fraction of the people who have accounts actually comment or actually upvote. And then a tiny fraction of those people actually comment and post.
Yeah.
And there's still like a lot of content on there. There's tons of Reddit content. And yet this extremely tiny percentage of the users are generating all this. And this leads me to a very interesting aspect to all this, in that passive social media participation is linked with anxiety and depressive symptoms, and there's a really strong correlation between the two.
Yeah.
But active social media participation is actually associated with less anxiety and depressive symptoms. It's not like a perfect correlation there, and there's definitely some contrary evidence there, but there is at least not the same amount of issues, it seems, whenever you're an active social media participator. And
Yeah, and
I think people probably,
ahead.
including myself, most people would consider themselves active because they're communicating with their friends on Snapchat or something like that, or sending a this or that now and then. I do a decent amount of participation in what I do. I comment and post on Reddit, and we're doing this here, but the ratio of how often I'm actively participating versus just passively scrolling through Reddit is sky high. It probably reflects that same, less than 1% of my Reddit time is spent actively engaging with it.
Yeah, and because it's easy to just like demonize social media and just say like it's all bad. There's obviously things about social media that are amazing. It's connected us in a way that we've never been able to be connected. It's also disconnected us in other ways, which is really unfortunate. But this conversation, it always gets me thinking about this dimension of consumption and creation. And I think my hypothesis is that the people who are more active on social media are creating more. So they are creating content, they are creating in these ways, and of course there's the element of having this kind of communal aspect of, having a friend group and having interaction, and that's part of it as well. But I have found in my experience, when I am in a depressive state, I am way more in this mode of just consuming. So it's so weird because it's this self-propagating thing, especially if we look at it with social media. It's like, okay, I feel bad, so I'm going to lay down and I'm going to open my phone and I'm going to open this application that just gives me dopamine, right? So, because these things are designed to give us pleasurable neurochemicals to keep us coming back, right? We get
Tailor-made
dopamine
for it.
That's literally designed to
be addictive.
Addict us with these neurochemicals, right? So I feel bad. I open this application that makes me feel good in the short term, and then I just scroll through. But now I'm looking at all of these people, and actually this hasn't been too much of a problem for me in my life personally, but I've definitely experienced it. And it's something that's very strange because it's happening on a subconscious level. So it's not like you're really aware of it while it's happening. It's just kind of this compulsive like scrolling thing. And then in the case of a lot of social media, like Facebook, for example, people are only posting those picture perfect moments of their vacation or of their awesome time that they had with their friends or whatever. So then there's this thing about then there's this comparison that happens.
Yeah,
like,
you're comparing your own average to other people's highlight reels.
Exactly. And so now it's creating this loop where it's like, oh, you look at that and then you're like, oh, wow, well, I am a fucking loser. Like, I'm just sitting here on my couch looking at Facebook. And then it makes you feel even shittier. And then it makes you crave a positive experience and a positive feeling, which you can get in the very, very short term through social media use. So it creates this negative feedback loop. And I think that is and even with active users, like there's this thing, I had a friend who told me, like he wanted to start sharing things on Facebook. He's a musician, and he's like, yeah, I want to like share the stuff I've been working on. But he noticed that it was actually coming from a place of like, it was like kind of this, it was coming from a place of ego. It was like, oh, I want people to tell me that it's good, and I want people to positively affirm what I'm doing. And I mean, props to him for being aware of that and becoming aware, because after it happened and then he didn't get the response he was looking for, he got sad, and then he realized like, oh man, this is just, I'm just craving attention basically. But I think a lot of people are going through this cycle and they're completely unaware of it. They know that they feel bad, but like there's, it's very difficult to put all these pieces together and to realize, how all of these little things impact us with our behaviors and our thoughts and our emotions, and how they're all kind of connected.
Yeah, it's really, really difficult, especially since these things are so designed to hijack our sort of brain chemistry. I heard one guy in this 60 Minutes piece, which I'll probably put in the show notes. It's pretty short, and it gets into some of the corporate side of this. But this guy referred to it as a race to the bottom of the brain stem.
Oh,
I thought that was a great line.
Man, that is just visceral, just right down to the reptilian brain.
Yeah, like basically the people who are working at Facebook and Snapchat, Instagram, all these different social media things, they're working all the time on better ways to get you addicted. And they call it like brain hacking or something like that, some goofy techie term. But they're, as Bill Maher said, they're basically tobacco companies trying to get children addicted to something that's bad for them.
Yeah. And I think what people tend to forget is like, people, these are businesses.
Yeah.
They make money by either, well, it's a combination of collecting your personal data and selling it, and through advertisements. So the thing is, the way that they make the most money is for you to be on their application for as long as possible to get you exposed to the most amount of advertisements. That is how they succeed as a business.
Yeah, they're a business and you're the product.
Exactly.
I heard this other guy in that 60 Minutes piece. It was really interesting. Who ran a company literally called Dopamine. It was like Dopamine Inc. or something like that. And it was named after, because a lot of his stuff was designed around this particular trigger, this dopamine trigger thing. And he apparently sort of saw the fuckery going on and decided that he was going to design an app that basically anytime you went on a social media application, it would like, the app would interject for like 10 seconds and your screen would get hijacked by just a simple like soft color screen and a little circle visual that expanded in and out, and it just said, breathe with me for 10 seconds.
I love that.
It's perfect. And guess what? The App Store wouldn't let him put it on. Apple wouldn't allow him to put it on their application store.
Wow.
And when he asked why, their reasoning was that anything that keeps people from constantly looking at their phones doesn't belong in our store.
That is horrifying.
Yeah.
That is absolutely horrifying.
Yeah, they are actively basically just trying to turn us all into phone zombies. Anything that they can do to get your eyes glued to that screen for longer. And, this, I won't go down a rabbit hole here, but it's just this classic profit motive problem of short-term gain versus long-term sustainability.
Yeah.
They're just trying to jam this thing. I mean, 15 years we've had these things. And now they're turning basically electronics into drugs.
Yeah.
And literal drugs, dopamine in your brain is the same sort of thing that is the trigger mechanism for opioids. So you can absolutely get addicted in a chemical way to this stuff. And they have pretty much sacrificed any kind of long-term sustainability because we're just racing towards a cliff with this stuff. I mean, the suicide and anxiety rates of children these days is sky fucking high.
Yeah, it's actually, it's just horrible. Like right now, we are in the midst of the greatest mental illness epidemic of human history. It's, and one of the things, because there's a lot of things that are, affected by this, and there are a lot of things that affect our mental health. So we're obviously not saying that it's only social media and the phone thing, but it actually, and it relates to something that I kind of put a pin in a previous episode. We'll probably talk about it more another time, but this idea of just like how comfortable it is to live as a modern human being. Like there's no physical stressors on us. Like there's no, like we have this, this fight or flight mechanism, and there's no reason to fight or fly anymore, like run away. So it's all but it's still there and it still affects us. And then we get in these loops that are all in our head, basically. But that's a whole nother topic that we'll get into another time. But I mean, what I wanted to say, like, about this mental illness epidemic is it is partially due to our interfacing with technology. One of the things that I noticed is that, in particular, young women, like 16 to 24, are being affected very negatively by this. I mean, 1 in 4 young women experience anxiety and or depression. 1 in 4. It's been at all-time high: depression, anxiety, self-harming, suicide rates. It's never been at this level.
Not to mention the slew of other things that you often hear people say, like OCD or ADHD, which some people kind of make fun of because some people who don't have them all that extremely tend to use it as kind of an excuse for bad behavior sometimes. But these are real issues. People are having low-grade disorders like that pop up, and the technology is part of it. The comfort is part of it. I think the sheer amount of information that we're getting is a big part of it.
That spectrum, I think it's totally related to the consumption and creation spectrum, and how we've all been moving more and more towards just pure consumption. And as creative beings, it's going to throw us off.
Yeah.
Too much yin, not enough yang. I mean...
Yeah, and not to mention the community is essentially fallen apart as a concept at least in the Western world.
Yeah.
There's pockets of it here and there, but for the most part, outside of your family, your work, and your immediate friend structure, there's no community, and those 3 usually aren't connected at all, so they don't really count as a community. They're like just disparate pieces of what a community should be.
Yeah.
And we've used these social media platforms and technologies to sort of fake communities.
Yeah.
And it does, one thing I have to say is that there are very positive ways that you can take advantage of this. And it all comes down to mindfulness. One of the things that I do is I am on the Patreon for the Duncan Trussell Family Hour, which, if you don't know what that is, check it out. It's amazing. And he has a Discord channel where all the Patreon subscribers who give a certain level, it's not that much, but so most of the Patreon subscribers can go on there and we can all hang out and chat. There's a bunch of different chat channels in there. There's a voice chat channel. And then once or twice a week, he actually comes on and does like a live video thing with us where he gets on video, and usually about 50 of us hop in a chat room, and we're just talking to each other and listening to Duncan do his thing. And that is a really, really cool way to use social media. I mean, I get nothing but positivity out of that, really, besides possibly getting distracted at work because it comes on when I'm working. But usually it's at lunch, so I can take a break. But it gives me a good feeling. I recognize a lot of the people in there since I've been a part of it for a little while now. People are super kind in there, but that's like, to me, that's sort of like utopian and sort of the best example of this online community.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you bring that up, because we've talked about this quite a bit, and it's something that we want to emulate. That we want to build an actual constructive community where we can interact with each other, share our creations, and learn and grow together. And we've been kind of trying to figure out, like, okay, how do we actually do that? So we've set up some social media like pages, but like, I mean, we're very new to this, so we're still trying to figure out how to do that. But that is very much one of our intentions. We want to interact with you guys. We want to hear your questions. We want to hear your ideas. We want to see your creations. And we're still kind of trying to figure out the best way to do that. Right now, we're just mainly using the podcast email, casualcognitioncast@gmail. So if like we really want to have an active community, right, where we can have this back and forth. It's not, we're very much encouraging you guys to not just consume these podcasts. Of course that helps, but like sharing it with other people, sharing your thoughts with us. We've gotten a couple emails already, and I just can't tell you how excited it makes us. Shout out to Caesar and Jake for hitting us up. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. It means the world to us. It just like puts a huge smile on our face when we get to read those. So thank you guys.
It really does. And if you've never done that sort of thing before, I'll tell you that it I don't know, it gives me such a cool feeling to get on the DTFH Discord and everything. Like, it feels good to participate in this way. It really does. And it can be a little embarrassing or a little weird at first, but once you sort of get the hang of it, it becomes very natural, and it's a lot of fun. And I've had a couple of emails read on podcasts or on this or that, and it just gives me such big like butterflies in my stomach when somebody is who's doing some kind of creative thing like that is reading my thing or talking about my thing, whatever I wrote. So it's a lot of fun. So give it a shot. And we obviously want to hear from you and want to see you. So, and go follow us on Instagram so I can get my dopamine, damn it. trying to get them likes, bro. I don't know. Does Instagram have likes? I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, that's another thing because we both, Nate and I, like, don't really use social media very much. So now that we realize, okay, we actually have to use it to build a sustainable, like, global community and network. So there's all this funny stuff like that of like, oh, you just feel like old dudes, like, this goddamn technology, like, how the fuck did I
What's the
post
password?
Yeah, exactly.
I forgot. Yeah, but we're in our social media pages are pretty dry right now. They don't really have a whole lot going on, but we're gonna work on that. We're gonna start posting shit and like trying to create a sort of multifaceted approach to our thing here. We're not just gonna post the podcast on there. We're going to try to post some things that we find interesting, some articles, some other podcasts, different things like that. And, on Twitter, I'm going to put everything in all caps and end each tweet with sad. So look for it. I mean, it works. It's worked for somebody else.
Amazing.
So Hank and I are going to continue to try to reach out to everybody and create some kind of community with this. And it's because, man, we need it. We need more, as Chris Ryan says, we need to design our zoo a little bit better. The way that we're approaching life, especially in the West, this is my perspective. We're in America and Sweden, so I know it's different in different parts of the world, but the way we approach life here is not working. It's and America is one of the only developed countries where in the recent years the suicide rate has actually gone up, and as you were saying, the anxiety and depression and mental illness rates are just skyrocketing. Yeah. They're going up more and more. And women are almost twice as likely as men to experience a lot of these. Although I would say that that's because the way that men typically tend to manifest these things, it tends to be a little bit more subtle and hard to see from the outside.
Yeah, and I think they're less likely to seek help in general.
Yeah. Less likely to seek help, less likely to be in touch with their emotions enough to know what's going on. Just in general, less likely to talk about it or face it. So yeah. I do think that women seem to be a little bit more heavily affected. But I think that men are also going through just as big of a problem. And Duncan said something that I thought was really interesting. He was like, I think that masculinity in America is really just like the low-grade symptoms of PTSD. Like the way that we see manliness, like boys don't cry, you gotta be tough, a lot of anger, a lot of just sort of like stoicism and closed off, and
it's the negative masculine.
Yeah,
they're not celebrating the positive traits, and that goes into a whole nother conversation. Oh man, we're not even gonna go there.
No, we won't go down that rabbit hole. But I happen to know a lot of men that definitely have traumatic issues that they haven't dealt with, that, if I was to say to them, oh yeah, you've been emotionally wounded basically, and unless you do some self-work, some awareness training, something, go to a therapist,
Yeah.
then you're going to have a problem, they would just scoff at me.
Yeah.
Like, that wasn't that bad. That's such a typical thing for men to do, is to sort of portray this tough front that, it wasn't that bad, or say like, oh, it's not like I was in war, or even if you were in war, it's not like I saw my buddy die right next to me, or it's not like I got shot. Trauma triggers are different for everybody, and some people don't really exhibit PTSD symptoms after the most extreme possible circumstances. And then there's other times, I think it was Gabor Mate who said that one time one of his patients, he couldn't figure out why he was like terrified of animals. And it turned out that whenever he was a baby, like Gabor ended up like talking to his mom and asking him if there was anything like in early childhood that he wouldn't remember. And she said the only thing that I could think of was one time when he was a baby, I walked away for a minute and this cow walked up to him and like gave him a big old lick, and it freaked him the fuck out. He was crying for a long time after that. And after they approached it in this way, he ended up like being able to treat the guy. So the seemingly benign things can trigger our brains into this trauma response, and it's not because you're not tough, it's not because you're weaker than somebody else, it's just brain chemistry, and we have to approach it that way.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I would go so far as to say that, to be honest. Like, I think it's a little just to say it's just brain chemistry. Like, I think there's a very much a obviously that is something that we can look at that's super useful, but there are other things that if we just like zoom out and take a more holistic standpoint, like the things that are happening in the body, like they can be affecting the brain chemistry, but like, because what I want to say about that is the issue with saying that it's just brain chemistry is this thing that we have right now where you go in and you're depressed, and then the doctor says, oh, you're just depressed because you don't have enough serotonin, so let me just give you serotonin pills.
Okay, yeah, there's definitely an issue there.
So that's like, it's like the symptom, right? But what's actually the problem might be something like this trauma that you're storing in your body somewhere, or something like that. And it's really funny that you bring up that example, because I was going to bring that exact same one up. So it's just super awesome.
I know you're a fan of Gabor Mate too. He's got some really great stuff.
Yeah, he does amazing work. He works a lot with addiction and childhood trauma, and it's just really fascinating work. He's an amazing person and therapist. But one thing, because we've talked a lot about the social media stuff, and now we're kind of going more into this mental illness thing, and I wanted to ask you, because I think it's really important that we take the bird's eye view, and then we can also share like with our personal experience. So like, have you, well, I already know this, but for for our listeners, have you had to deal with depression and anxiety? What was that like for you? How did you like get out of it, or what was anything in that kind of sphere?
So, as you already know, yes, I have dealt quite a bit with depression. I still do. I had a lot of childhood traumas, and it's an ongoing thing. And that's another thing I would like to people to know. If you are going through depression, especially, I have a lot more experience with depression than anxiety. My girlfriend has an anxiety disorder, and I've seen, so I have a little bit of a third person thing with that. But my issues manifest a lot more on the depressive side, which I think anxiety and depression are very closely linked. And
Yeah, the two sides of the same coin, really.
yeah, basically. Anxiety is hot depression, depression is cold anxiety. And so my stuff manifests a lot more on the depressive side. And the thing that I want people to know is that it is temporary. And that's really the biggest lie of a depressed mind, is that this is forever. You're never going to get away from this. And it does go away. I go through depressive cycles now and then, and they can last anywhere from days to weeks to months. And it sometimes I truly cannot point to something that put me into the cycle. But and sometimes I can't really get out of the cycle without letting it take its course. I don't understand it fully yet, but I'm sure somebody more educated could probably give better reasons as to why my cycles tend to do the things they do. But one thing I will say is, after years of work, the cycles are fewer, farther between, and shorter in length. And when they come, it's not so scary. It's not like, fuck, what is going on? Like what's wrong with me? And once again, that lie would creep up. This is forever. Now, when I get a depression, it's like, all right, I'm going to feel shitty for a little while, and that's okay. And the more I can relax and not be so judgmental of myself and try to not fall into negative feedback loops like excessive social media use or excessive drinking or smoking or whatever it may be, the better I can do those things, the shorter this thing will last. And the more I will get out of it without any kind of real, negative consequences. And something that's been really important for me is to talk candidly with people about it, because I don't go to a therapist.
Yes.
And I highly recommend going to therapists for people. But for me, I think a therapist is, they're trained professionals, so there's a lot more than this, but the core of what they do is they provide a listening ear that people aren't so self-conscious to go to. People feel weird about going to their friends and family with this kind of stuff. But I think that that's the most important thing to do, is talk candidly with your friends, even if it's just one person. Everybody always says, oh, if you ever need to talk, I'm here. And so take somebody up on that offer. People will be willing to listen. They might be a little shaky on it. They might try to fix it too much, which is something I've done in the past. But really what you need, and sometimes you can preface the conversation to somebody like this in saying that, I'm not looking for advice or for you to try and fix me. I just need someone to listen to me talk for a little while.
I would highly recommend having that statement in there, because especially I've noticed with guys, they tend to try to fix and be like, oh, the classic. Well, first of all, just thank you for sharing all that, Nate. I really appreciate.
Oh yeah, I got all kinds of stories about depression and stuff we could talk about.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, because this thing about trying to solve it, I've fallen into that really bad before.
Totally,
my sister,
me too.
She'll be expressing how she's feeling, and she's just like, oh, feeling so down, and I'm just like do some yoga, do some meditation, and then you'll be fine. But it's that's not how it works. She needs to she needs to be listened. She needs to be listened to, and she needs to be heard. And we all need that. And, you know, unfortunately, we live in a world where people, like, we have lost the art of listening, I feel. People are always, they're just waiting for you to finish so they can say what they were going to say. And, you know, I really want to just add some of my own insights, because I've also dealt with depression in my life. And it's very much related to environmental factors. There are genetic factors. There are epigenetic factors. But just like a few things that I just want to throw out to anybody who has experienced depression before or is in a depressive state right now. You know, one of the things that's really strange and paradoxical about depression is, like, so if I just take a step back, wanting to have a positive experience is in itself a negative experience, and accepting a negative experience for what it is a positive experience. So what I've found the last couple times when I felt myself going into a depression, what I did, and this is so weird, so strange, what I did was nothing. And this is the thing. When most people say, "Oh, I'm doing nothing," but it's like they're actually on their phones.
They're doing a lot.
They're looking at videos. They're distracting themselves, right? But I literally laid down on my bed for an entire day, and I didn't think about how fucked up it was, and I didn't go into my head. I just laid down and felt this unutterable sinking feeling, this just completely nihilistic, fucked up thing. And I just laid down and I felt it. And I felt in my body, and it took that whole day. But the thing that was so strange is when I did that, when I allowed myself to feel it, when I allowed myself to just be with it, and I accepted how I was able to not move into another place. And then the next day I was actually fine. And that's the only time, like, every time when I would get depressed before, I would go into these cycles, these addictive cycles of compulsive whatever, insert compulsive behavior here. Mm-hmm. And then it would last for a long time. And this last time when I did that, it was like literally one day. So I don't have enough data to say, like, oh yeah, this is going to work for me every time and it's going to work for you. But that's one thing that I have found that is extremely valuable. And then there's one more thing that I want to throw out to you guys. Because, you know, when we get into these depressions and they last for a long time, what ends up happening is all of these, like, duties and responsibilities of being an adult and being a human, they start piling up. So it's like, oh fuck, I gotta pay that invoice, and like, oh yeah, I gotta call my friend, he's been hitting me up and I haven't been responding, and and there's all these things that pile up, and that is just a crushing weight on top of what is already, like, almost unbearable if we're not accepting of it. But another one of the things that's been proven to help people get out of depression is literally just, if you can muster just any energy and just do the smallest thing, take a shower,
make your bed,
feel, and just notice how it feels to be doing these different things, or whatever it is that you can do to just muster up, because that is what gets the ball rolling. And then you can start building up a momentum, and then you do something and you realize, wow, that felt really good. I love playing music. I love writing poetry. I love talking to my family or my friends. I love going on a walk outside when it's raining. You know, and and we can build up this momentum. Because I mean, depression is basically just like zero momentum.
Full inertia.
That's like the physical aspect of it, right? It's just complete lethargy and inertia. So I just wanted to throw those two things in there because those two ideas practically have helped me so much dealing with depression.
Yeah, me too. I'm the exact same way. And even if you're not getting everything done that you should, or I shouldn't say should, that you are responsible for, doesn't mean that it won't help.
Yes,
just try to do something small.
Yeah, and celebrate the small wins.
Yeah.
Give yourself a reward, anything so you can reinforce a behavior that is going to help you to get out of the pit.
Yeah.
And I just want to say one more thing to anybody. I mean, this is to all of our listeners. This is to everybody on the planet, but especially to you who are feeling down, depressed, or anxious or whatever. I love you. I don't care what problems you have or what projections or how fucked up you are. I love you, and I'm just so grateful that we can connect in this way. I'm just so incredibly I don't really know how to express it in words, honestly.
Hank loves you. Oh boy.
It's true.
Going back to something that you said about your day in doing nothing, I think it's so important that we don't feel guilty. You are allowed to feel bad.
Yeah.
And I think that there's this weird... I think I came up with a good phrase one time, but I'm blanking on it now. But it's basically like the over-positivity of our culture. Like, we do not want people to express their negative emotions.
Yeah, toxic positivity.
Toxic positivity is a good one. But, you know, it's all over posters, it's all over schools. It's in our very language that we use. You know, how are you doing? This, you know, bad is not an answer to that question.
So true, dude.
Yeah, it's so we need to allow ourselves to feel bad sometimes. And sometimes I think that one of the biggest reasons I go into these depressions is because I've just been ignoring my negative feelings for so long. And, you know, with like one of the things that I have found as a trigger to sending me into usually a short depression is if I just overwhelm myself with social interaction. And I'm a very introverted person, which is a loaded word, but the sort of dictionary definition is somebody who gains energy by themselves and expends it around other people, whereas an extrovert would be somebody who gains energy being around other people and expends it on their own. And I definitely am the former. Whenever I'm out, I enjoy and I very much enjoy social interaction. I love hanging out with people. But if I spend too much time doing that for too long, I think it literally drains my body of like serotonin and stuff. I think it's kind of like an MDMA thing or something where you've expended so much of your energy that your body is like low on things. That's how it feels. It feels to me like I'm literally like working on, like running on empty. Like
yeah, I think how it actually at least my understanding of that phenomena, is basically, so when you're around people, you're going to have a higher level of things like dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin.
Mm-hmm.
And what ends up happening, so if you're doing that like all the time, now your baseline feeling, just like how you feel, your baseline is going to be higher than normal.
Yeah.
So then when that goes away and then you're back to your normal baseline, it feels like, oh, what the fuck? Like, this feels bad. And this is the same issue that people run into with like chronic cannabis smoking, for example. If you're smoking weed all the time, your baseline is going up to this level of like, oh man, this is basically just amazing. It's like not even feasible for just like a regular every day. It's not a sustainable level. And then when you stop, then you just feel like shit, right? And that could be the case with any kind of drug or same actually, yeah, with the social media stuff and all of that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I also I get a little anxious around certain kinds of people. You know, if I'm hanging out with you or I'm hanging out with Will or somebody I'm really, really close with, I don't feel that at all. But if I'm like around my family, who I love, but I feel like sometimes I have to put on a little bit of a face with them, and or with people I don't know that well, friends that I'm not quite as close with, and that creates a little bit of anxiety for me. So I think that has to do with it too, where I'm just like amped up all the time. And another thing that I wanted to say in regards to this, because anxiety and depression in a lot of ways is caused in part by cortisol.
Yeah.
And which is basically the stress hormone. And the only way that cortisol is directly expelled by your body, it's normally processed through the liver. So if you're like me and you like beer and stressing, it's really not good for your liver.
Yeah, not a great combination.
No. But the only way that your body directly expels cortisol is actually through your tears.
Wow.
So that's why after crying you tend to feel a lot better, because your body is just like basically exploding out your stress chemicals.
Wow.
And this makes it so much more nefarious to try and drill it into little boys' heads that they're not supposed to cry. If you feel like crying, you need to cry. And I had to learn that. I mean, my brother and dad are very tough guys, and it's not going to be very common for them to cry. And they weren't like really hard on me, but there was definitely like something my dad always used to say to me: "You're tough, you can take it." He always used to say that to me as a little kid. Anytime I cried, anytime I got hurt, "You're tough, you can take it." And so I got it in my head that it was embarrassing, something to be ashamed of, a weakness to cry. So I had to relearn that behavior that was part of dealing with these childhood traumas, was learning how to cry again and learning how to allow myself to feel bad and not feel guilty about it. And now I'll tear up at a Disney movie now. Like I love it when I feel like crying. That's a great moment.
Yeah.
You know, you're either expelling bad stress hormone chemicals and working through negative emotions, or you're literally, crying tears of joy at seeing something that you just are so happy about. So I mean, crying to me is a good thing. It's a very good thing.
Yeah, I love crying, dude. It's a strange thing to say, but I really do love it. It feels so so good. It's just the release, because we build up, we tense up, and we clench, and we try to fucking hold the weight of the world like we're trying to all be Atlas, and it's like, nah, man. Not gonna happen. That it doesn't work. It's not a sustainable lifestyle choice to try to hold the entire globe on your shoulders. It's a sick workout for like a very small, low reps, but you can't just do that all the time.
There's this great book that I have not read, but I just love the title so much. And I heard I think it was the author, talk a little bit about it. It's called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And it's basically about how most animals, they have all the same stress responses that we do, but they don't have the traumas that we do. And what happens is when a zebra gets chased by a lion, obviously that's like prime stress. It could die. I mean, how about you just imagine getting chased by a lion? You're going to be very, very stressed out.
Yeah.
But after they escape the lion, if they do, all their body chemistry goes back to normal. Their muscles relax, their cortisol levels go down, and they go right back to feeling okay again.
Yeah, back to rest and digest.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why humans are so heavily affected in this way is the fact that our brains have very strong memory centers. And we have strong prediction centers. A chimpanzee can think and plan about, I think the number is around a few minutes into the future.
Yeah.
It's not very long. And they can remember things. They have memory, but as far as we know, it doesn't trigger the same sort of response as it does with us. Because if you think about a painful memory, you're going to feel an echo of what you felt in that moment as a human. And, you might feel a little depressed, you might feel a little sad, you might feel good, you might feel happy. You might feel a longing to go back to that, or a fear that it'll happen again. And that sort of thing is, as far as we know, is a uniquely human experience. And we can take that ad infinitum to the point where we're the constant issue in our society is that we're all afraid of death.
Yeah.
So we're afraid of everything, and we remember everything. Not everything, but you know what I mean. These things have these really strong imprinting patterns on our brains, and our prediction abilities are so incredible that we can create whole worlds of fear and anxiety and negativity and bad potentiality.
Absolutely, man.
So this is where awareness comes in. This is where it's so important for us to be cognizant, aware, present, and noticing how our minds are working, how our bodies are feeling, what the patterns are, and guide that awareness in the direction we want to go. So that, I think, brings us nicely to our final segment today.
Yes.
Which is brought to you by Caesar. He requested this in our first listener email.
That is absolutely right. Caesar, thank you so much for reaching out. We're super stoked to share our understanding and our experience of the world of meditation.
Yes. So this is probably going to be the first of many conversations about meditation. And it's one of the things that Hank and I are most excited to talk about here, because we think it is really closely related to a lot of the things we talk about on here: creativity, learning, what we're talking about today, especially with these mental health things and social media addiction. It's so important to have awareness, and meditation is essentially the training of awareness, the training of the ability to hold awareness and to notice things. And it's kind of difficult to talk about sometimes, because we've talked about process versus goal orientation, and meditation, like many other things, people try to take as a goal oriented thing.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work if you do it that way. If you go into meditation thinking, oh, this is going to turn me into a this or that, or give me the ability to do this or that, it's going to get in the way of your progress.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess that there's so many misconceptions floating around when it comes to meditation. Like, one of the things that I always hear is like, oh yeah, you just got to kill the mind. Like, you got to turn off your mind. And first of all, good fucking luck. That shit is not going to happen. Okay?
You're not going to turn it off.
You're not going to turn it off. And beyond that, like, why would you want to turn it off? Because it is an absolutely amazing machine, a product of millions of years of evolution, and it's amazing. The thing is, we don't want to just kill it. We want to be able to guide it. We want to use it's an amazing tool, and we want to use it to our advantage. So that's the first thing I want to say. And basically, like you said, like a meditation practice, because meditation is a state, but it's also used in this other context of it being a practice, which is kind of a weird thing, because, in some sense, the act of meditation, or being in meditation, it's not a doing. It's just it is a state of awareness. And basically, just to go back and just give you guys like a really practical thing that you can try, because there are also, I do want to say that there's many different kinds of meditation practices. Some of them are actually more of a doing, and that's totally okay, because the practice is there to help you kind of flex the awareness muscle of our consciousness. And so one thing that you can try, if you've never tried it before, is very, very simple. And I was about to say you can sit down, but you don't have to sit down. You can be standing, you can lay down, but just do it. Like, don't do it in your bed or like while you're watching TV or something. Like, just wherever you're at. Maybe you can pause this right now and give it or pause this after I finish and give it a go. Just notice and focus your whole attention on the sensation of breathing. And, the breath is such an amazing tool, because it's always happening. Regardless of whether we are aware of it or not, we are breathing. We are somewhere in that cycle of in-breath, pause, out-breath, pause. So just put your whole attention and focus on the feeling of breathing. And every time, what's going to happen, your mind is going to come in and you're going to start thinking about stuff. You're going to be like, oh shit, I got to go to work later, or this person said this. And that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with having thoughts happening. But the idea is, whenever you notice that you're thinking, just go back, focus on your breath. And the thing is every time you do that, like that's actually what's important in meditation, is that act of noticing, oh, and you know, you don't want to actually sub-vocalize this because then you're doing more thinking, but noticing, okay, I'm thinking, and then going back to the breath.
Actually, in the Kagyu lineage, they do sub-vocalize.
Yeah, that can be a helpful
in their mind.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's good because just one word and then it's labeling the thing and then you go back. But what I think a lot of people will do is like,
oh fuck, I was thinking.
I'm thinking, shit, I fucked it up. I ruined it. and it's pretty it's pretty funny, but like I said, the thing that's important is going back, flexing that awareness, noticing that you're thinking, going back to the breath and putting your whole focus on that. That's the most basic meditation practice. Give it a shot if you want to. You don't need to do it for an hour every day. You can just do it for a couple minutes and just try it out and just notice. Like it's a state of, it's being a witness. Witness the thoughts in your head as if they're clouds passing by in the sky. Witness the different feelings and sensations in your body. Just watch it all. If you get distracted, go back to the breath. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and to elaborate a little bit on what you're just saying, if you do this and you find yourself going down rabbit hole after rabbit hole, that's actually a really, really good sign there, because you're able to catch it. And that's one of the big things that you are training yourself to do more in your day-to-day is noticing that, my mind has gone down this negative rabbit hole. Let's steer it in a different direction. And I think that honestly, that's over my years of meditation, the biggest single difference that I've noticed is that when I get mad, or when I get I'm going into a depression, or when I get really anxious or anticipatory in some negative way, I notice it. I realize it. I recognize it. And not all the time, but most of the time. And the times that I do notice it, I don't always make the right choice and steer myself out of it. One of my worst times is driving. And it's been a big challenge for me because I live in a tourist area. There's a ton of traffic. There's people who are going 60 right next to people who are going 30. There's construction going on right now. It is a high stress. There's one highway going through town, and there's literally millions of tourists here every year. And it's a challenge, but more and more I notice myself getting angry. I notice myself getting anxious, and I just breathe, and I'm definitely not in the state of meditation in these moments because I'm distracting myself. I'm listening to different things. But just that moment of, I'm getting anxious here, or I'm getting angry here, and taking a few deep breaths and trying to refocus on whatever I was listening to and relaxing, slowing down a little bit. That is the real magic of meditation that I've gotten, is I can control myself a little bit more. And as I think it was Raghu Marcus say, it just puts a little bit of space in between me and whatever's happening in my mind.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of space, just enough for me to get in there and control my consciousness in the way that I want.
Yeah, and it's so fast. It's a really fascinating process because, before like practicing meditation, it's like I felt like I was the thoughts that were happening in my head, and that I was, this combination of like my body and then the thoughts that are happening. But what you'll find is that what you are is the watcher. Like, you are the thing that is aware of the thoughts. You aren't the thoughts. Thoughts are happening. And that's exactly like you said. That's what it gives you space. It allows you to detach. And then it's just so much easier to deal with when strange, fucked up thoughts go in your head. You realize, like, oh yeah, okay, well, that's not me. Like, that's just something that's happening in this piece of hardware that I have, that I'm interfacing with.
Yeah, that was a weird byproduct of my meditation practice, is that I sometimes notice my mind having extremely fucked up thoughts. And there's actually a psychological term for them. They call it intrusive thoughts or something like that.
That's basically what self-psychiatry is all about.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you some of my horrible things that I've thought in another segment. But understanding that that's not because I'm a bad person. That's not because I suddenly went from, being who I know I am and having moral standards and suddenly I'm lapsing or something like that. They're just thoughts, and they just pop up from time to time, especially surrounding strong emotional states, anger, sexuality, fear. These kind of things can really generate some sometimes scary thoughts. Sometimes I'll find myself going down a thought rabbit hole when I'm angry or something like that, and I'll snap out of it in a few minutes and be like, holy shit, who was that guy? Like, that's not me. That's not how I am, how I want to be. What happened there? And man, I used to have a lot of anger whenever I was younger. And I remember Ian saying, Ian's a mutual friend of ours. I remember him saying that like when he had seen me a couple of years after high school, like, Nate, what happened to you? You seem so relaxed. You seem so chill. And this was really before I'd even had my meditation practice for a long time. But it was just like I had so much anger going on back then, and I used to just dwell on it, just really live in that anger and really just soak it in. And I still have those tendencies every now and then to just dwell in anger, and especially, like I said, especially when I'm in traffic. And this practice just gives a little bit of space for me to get myself in there and steer my consciousness away from that. And I know I'm repeating myself a little bit here, but it's important to know what you're doing here and why. You're not trying to become a productive Superman, which a lot of business leaders seem to think meditation's about. You're not trying to become enlightened, which is what a lot of spiritualists think meditation is about. You're just trying to create some space between you and your reactions to things, to what's around you.
Yeah, and that's kind of like one of these practical things that we can gain through the practice. But I find time and time again, the thing that is the most gratifying about it is when we go into the state of meditation where we are completely absorbed in the present moment, when everything else drifts away, all of the worries and compulsive thinking and all of this stuff, and when we just go into this state of awareness where we're just feeling and noticing everything that's happening, and it's just a state of complete and utter peace. And this isn't like if you don't experience that your first time meditating, that's completely fine.
You probably won't.
But the thing is coming back again and again, if you keep going, even just a couple minutes every day, what you'll find is like you're basically peeling back layers of the onion. So you start off and it's just like all of this shit that's been building up. But as you peel back these layers and then you get beyond the mind, and then okay, now there's all this stuff, or it could happen in different orders, but then it might be the body and all of this stuff happening in your body. And you go deeper and deeper and deeper until it's like you don't even exist. Like, and I just mean that in like the ego sense, like you're not just thinking all of these thoughts about and judging everything and putting value, and I'm like this and this, this person made a noise in the other room, and like, that eventually and what's so weird is like in the beginning, and you still will have those thoughts, but it's so funny because the thing that allows you to really transcend them is just to accept it. If you're like, I'm such a fucking judgmental piece of shit, like that's just the same thing. Yeah. That's just like, now you're just turning it back on yourself and you're doing the exact same thing. So it's honestly, guys, it's just fascinating. Just let your curiosity lead you in this, like, because we don't fucking know who we are. We have these ideas and these thoughts about who we are, but just try to just feel into it and go beyond the thoughts. And there is some unbelievably amazing things going on that are completely, they're unexplainable. And I think this is such a valuable thing to share. And I guess go ahead.
It is fascinating, but do expect to be bored. Don't let the fear of boredom keep you from meditating. Meditating to me is I often compare it to exercise. And just like exercise, the hardest thing is to get yourself to the gym. The hardest thing is to get yourself to the mat.
Yeah.
Sitting for 5 minutes is not that difficult. Thinking about sitting for 5 minutes is excruciating. So just do it. And one strategy that I've used, and I know Hank has used to help with this, is to tell yourself, I'm just going to sit for 60 seconds. 1 minute. I can do 1 minute. And usually you'll end up sitting for a lot longer than that. But if you do only get that 1 minute, that's okay too.
Yeah. The thing that is valuable is the consistency.
Yeah.
If you do it an hour today and then you think about it tomorrow and you're like, I don't have time to do that, and then you just never do it again, it's not gonna be helpful. But if you go even just 1-2 minutes, a few minutes every day, you have this compounding effect.
Yeah, 2 minutes for 30 days is going to be way better than an hour one day.
Yes, absolutely.
Even though it's the same amount of total time.
Yeah, and honestly, for all you guys out there listening, I would recommend, just don't worry about the time that much. It's not that important, honestly. It's not about me going to you and being like, dude, I meditated for 45 minutes every day. Like, I always hear that thing of like, I've been meditating every day for 3 hours. It's like, okay,
It's like, well,
that's cool. I don't know.
aren't you impressive?
Yeah. So again, it's not really
You
about
must be a
time.
Buddha now.
It's about, but it is about taking the time to just be with yourself, to just be with your thoughts, feelings, sensations, accepting what is going on, and using, in this very basic practice, using the breath as the anchor. So anytime you get lost, go down a rabbit hole, come back to the breath. It's very soothing. It's very relaxing. And I really look forward to hearing from you guys how it goes. Let us know if you give it a go, if you liked it, if you had any troubles. We in some sense we're here for you guys. I mean, this is totally a thing that we have done because we love it. It's something that we want to share with all of you, but we also, or I speaking for myself, like I also want to support you guys in any way that I can. So
yeah, if there's anything that we can do or talk about to help with any of this stuff, the depression, anxiety, meditation, all this stuff, please reach out to us and ask us about it, because we love to talk about this kind of thing, and we can go a long time talking about meditation techniques. We've both used a lot of different techniques, a lot of different approaches, and had better or worse results with this or that. So, reach out to us with any questions or anything that we can do to aid you in this particular pursuit, because both of us find this to be so important, and we really think that the world needs this right now more than ever. For all the reasons that we've been talking about in the rest of this episode, we need to calm down our minds. We need to be able to regulate our input and output. We need to be able to act without reacting.
Absolutely. Guys, thank you so much for listening in. It's been a blast. We're looking forward to hearing from you. And we love you.
Yes, we do love you. Thank you for listening. And if you've gotten this far, hopefully you will rate us, because it is really, really helpful. The way that these things work on the algorithms, they go by, at least on the Apple one, which is the biggest podcasting app, it goes a lot by the ratings. So rating us actually helps us tremendously.
Yeah, also just like sharing it with a buddy. I mean, if you like the podcast, share it with a friend. Let somebody else know about it. We wanna build this thing up. We're just so excited about this, and really, in the end, like it's up to all of us. If you find this valuable, please share it, subscribe, all those things. We really want to keep this thing going. We're gonna do it anyways, but if you were to do that, it would help us out a lot, and we would be even more
and we're not trying
thankful.
to sell anybody anything or anything like that. We think that these ideas are important and valuable, and I know that I wish somebody could have been telling me this whenever I was younger and going through all these issues. And I did learn a lot through a lot of different people, but we want to make this an enjoyable space where we can spread these important ideas around. So if you enjoy and find this stuff valuable, then really the only way we want support in that, aside from reaching out to us, is to just help us get this thing out there. So thank you for listening, even if you don't do any of that, the rating or spreading, thank you so much for listening and being a part of our little community here. And we will see you in another 2 weeks. All right, everybody, another fine episode of Casual Cognition. We are just having so much fun doing this, so if you're enjoying it, subscribe, and we're going to be coming out with a lot more of these. So hopefully we'll hear from you soon, and we will see you in 2 weeks.